Hola, welcome! Today we're looking at the final matchup between Obi Wan and Maul.
Formerly Darth, now just Maul.
This was a highly anticipated fight. I cannot wait to see where it ranks. Let's get into it.
Now the only one
Hashtag this is my Obi-Wan.
All of this is
Me.
He looks so good against those stars with the fire in the foreground. Oh, that looks so good.
I led him to you. Let me make it right.
That is not your responsibility. I will mend this old wound.
Oh, that's pure fan service.
Ride north. That is your way out. Your way home.
See you soon, apprentice. Look what has become of you. A rat in the desert.
Look what I have risen above.
Nice comeback.
Come to kill you, but
This is by far my favorite phase in Obi-Wan's life. He has so much wisdom, and he's trying to impart that wisdom to Maul, but he cannot accept it because his mind is too clouded by anger and fear of Palpatine. All he can think about is his revenge against Obi-Wan.
what do you have?
Maul is trying to press Rule 1, and Obi-Wan is having none of it.
Why come to this place? Not simply to hide. Oh, you have a purpose here. Perhaps you are protecting something. No. Protecting someone.
I honestly think Obi-Wan would have let Maul walk if Maul hadn't pressed the reason why he was there. Oh, you could cut this tension with a knife. Oh, here we go. Obi-Wan switching from Form 3 to Form 4, which was Qui-Gon's sword style, which I will talk about in a minute. I was stunned at how short this fight scene was, but honestly, I don't see it happening any other way that could have been better than this.
Tell me, is it the chosen one?
He is.
He will avenge us.
You can't get writing better than this. To have Maul dying in Obi-Wan's arm, there's just so much to unpack in this one scene. It is just phenomenal. I cannot wait to see how this stacks up.
So let's do this thing!
Technical execution. Normally, having the knee that far over the toes is a huge no-no. Maul is in a broken bow, which generally pushes up and forward. When your knee is that far over your toes, there's no resistance in the opposite direction, which means there's nothing to prevent your opponent from pulling you off balance. However, this seems to be intentional. Obi-Wan appears to be in a hard bow, and as we can see, his knee is directly over his foot in a beautiful stance. The reason I said I think the knee is intentional is because Maul used his first stance as a transition to drop his knee and to get into position ready for his next attack. You can see him here coiled up like a snake, ready to drive upwards. Maul is getting ready to strike the bottom of Obi-Wan's lightsaber to drive it up and out of the way so that he can spin and stab Obi-Wan through the chest, like he did his master Qui-Gon. Obi-Wan knows exactly what Maul is going to do, which is why he pulls his slice down slightly so that he can slice through Maul's lightsaber and through Maul himself. When slicing, you rarely, if ever, want your sword behind you. When your sword's behind you, it cannot protect you. You can't block, you can't slice. Obi-Wan slices through Maul, but keeps his sword from going behind him. As we see, he is facing camera right, and his sword is pointing towards camera left, which means his sword is still in front of him. The reason this is good form is because it puts Obi-Wan in the position to quickly bring his elbows back towards Maul and bring his saber in for another block or another slice. Overall, the technical aspect of this fight scene was on point. The fight participants had great stances, they used good form on their swords. Overall, fantastic. However, there is one point that I do think is worth losing points. During Maul's second strike, Obi-Wan brings his saber down in the wrong direction to block the strike. It is better for Obi-Wan to bring the sword in the opposite direction and block Maul's strike head on than it is to drop the sword in the other direction and run the risk of not getting to the strike zone in time. For all these reasons, I am giving this fight scene a solid 18 points. Alright, risk of losing. Did we feel at any point that Obi-Wan was in imminent danger, that he wasn't going to win? I don't think so. Obi-Wan was in control the entire fight. Maul tried to test him by putting out the fire aggressively, but Obi-Wan kept his cool the entire fight, and it didn't seem like he was ever in imminent danger. Because of this, I am giving this fight scene a 0. Okay, hits versus blocks. You cannot get more perfect than 2 blocks and 1 hit. It is absolutely the best score. So this fight scene gets all 20 points. Repetition. First off, this fight scene is too short to be repetitive. Right off the bat. However, we do get Obi-Wan adapting his strategy to defeat Maul. As many of you probably know, Obi-Wan favors Form 3. If you don't know about the lightsaber fighting styles, I encourage you to look them up. It's really cool. It's part of the lore of Star Wars. It's awesome. You should check it out. When Obi-Wan switches to Form 4, which is Qui-Gon's form style, he is baiting Maul into a trap. Maul was trained by Palpatine. Palpatine is well aware of the Jedi sword forms and instructed his apprentice on how to counter them. We saw the counter to Form 4 when Darth Maul murdered Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan's master. As I said before, I believe Obi-Wan would have let Maul walk away had he not pressed his reason for being there. Obi-Wan is not interested in revenge, nor does he have a grudge any longer against Maul. Obi-Wan's sole interest is his mission, which is protecting Luke. We see Obi-Wan applying Rule 1 and presenting himself as weak to give Maul the confidence to use the same trick twice, which is Rule 7, by the way. Because it's not possible for this fight scene to be repetitive due to the length of the fight, and because we see Obi-Wan adapting to Maul, I am giving this fight scene all 15 points. clarity. There was no shaky cam in this at all, and the camera motion that there was nice and smooth. So it gets the first half, all 5 points. In the second half, there was only one cut with 3 strikes in it, which is qualified for, having at least 3 strikes per cut. However, there was no cut with at least 10 strikes. Because of this, it is losing 2 points, giving it a grand total of 8 points. Ending. Oof. Obviously, this fight ends with the death of Maul. However, this is not just an end to this fight. It is an end to many fights that came before.
I will mend this old wound.
Obi Wan and Darth Maul, now just Maul, have been fighting for a very long time. They are old men at this point. Because of the history of all the different fights that this end brings together, I'm adding an additional point, giving it a total of 11 out of 10. Environment. The fight takes place in a desert.
Tis a tricky bit of floor that, deceptively flat and unimpeded.
Terrain-wise, there's not a lot going on. I will say the blue starry night sky with the red from the fire, which gets replaced with the red from Maul's lightsaber, is gorgeous. For such a beautiful backdrop on this fight scene, I will award it 4 points. Use of environment. There wasn't much usage of the environment in this fight scene, especially since it was so quick. There was a little bit with Maul aggressively putting out the fire to try to coax Obi-Wan into a fight, but other than that, there's not much there. So this fight's going to get a 2 for this category. Believability. This fight takes place in the Star Wars universe. So right off the bat, lightsabers, perfectly believable. Warriors with heightened senses and abilities, perfectly believable. Now, why are the fight participants there in the first place? Well, Obi-Wan is hiding out in the desert, protecting Luke while he grows up. All of Obi-Wan's actions reflect his reason for being there. From being passive in the beginning and trying to talk Maul down, to ending the fight quickly by luring him into his little trap. Everything he does makes sense to why he is there. Maul is here seeking revenge against Obi-Wan. He blames Obi-Wan for losing his position as apprentice to Darth Sidious. The beginning of this fight and during this fight reflects Maul's hatred of Obi-Wan. But his hatred doesn't explain his death scene. Here we see Maul taking comfort in his enemy's arms as he asks Obi-Wan if the one he is protecting is the chosen one. When he answers in the affirmative, Maul says he will avenge us. Maul is painfully aware that both Obi-Wan and himself have been used by Darth Sidious, and that their practically lifelong feud amounts to absolutely nothing. Darth Sidious has won, and both of them have lost. Every action, facial expression, and words used in this fight are justified by the history of these two characters. So this fight scene is going to get a perfect 10 points. Pacing. The pacing of this fight scene, in my opinion, is perfection. We all know that Obi-Wan and Maul are going to fight. But the question became, in the early stages of this fight, why aren't they fighting? The tension rose to its peak until we got this euphoric moment where Obi-Wan ignites his lightsaber. As quickly as the fight begins, our excitement turns to shock. Why? Because they stopped fighting. Why, we asked. Then we see Maul's face change. We see his lightsaber split in two, and we see him fall into the arms of Obi Wan. This gradual buildup of tension, then a quick release, followed by a tranquil cooldown leading to the resolution, was perfection. However, mid-sized 3 to 5 minute fight scenes that have more action are generally more enjoyable than shorter fight scenes with less action. Because of this, due to its length, I have to bump this fight scene down to a 7. This gives us a subtotal of 95 points. But let's see how it does in the extra credit. Now, as for our extra credit categories, this was a Disney kids show, so obviously there's not a lot of gore. In fact, there's no gore. This was an extremely short fight scene, which was block, block, slice, so there's really no advanced uses of martial arts. There's no room to be creative because, again, it was block, block, slice, nothing really original there, and we didn't really destroy the environment at all. I mean, you could argue that there's a little bit with the kicking of the dust to the fire, but no, not really. So we're gonna quietly put a 0 in all these categories. However, emotion. Oh, there was a fair bit of emotion in this scene. So let's get into that. Art is something that moves you to an emotion. A story is art for the mind. And a fight scene is a part of the story where 2 or more characters must collide due to the conflict in the story. Now, there are 2 ways to value art. The first way is valuing something for what it is. A picture of a sunset, a well-crafted story. These things are enjoyed for what they are and the properties that they have. But another value that art can have is when it doesn't just move you to an emotion, but it triggers a memory. This sentimental value can move you to emotions that others would not experience. Star Wars is a story that has been told over generations. Parents have been able to share it with their children and their grandchildren. As the story has been told, there have been countless memories made by individuals over the years. Also, many have grown up with the characters, in particular Obi Wan and Maul, and have become attached to these characters. This fight scene moved so many fans towards emotions of excitement.
Oh my god, dude, this... Oh my god. Yes!
Shock.
Style, doesn't he?
And contentment.
Sheesh, that is not how I thought it would go down. That's so much better.
These are emotions that cannot be overlooked when rating this fight scene. So, because of the sentimental value that this fight scene has for being the conclusion to a decades-long story arc, I'm giving this fight scene a 6 for emotion. This gives us a grand total of 101 points. We take that number and divide it by the original categories, and we get a score of 10.1. A very, very good score. Let's see where it lands on the board. And there you have it, a very good score. This was a good fight scene. Borderline great. I think if it was a little longer, it could have been a great fight scene, but it's still a good fight scene. But what do you think? Does it deserve this score? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, I am out. Peace!